Thorpe Whistlesnatch had always prided himself on being the galaxy's foremost expert in creating foolproof technology. For 17 centuries, he had designed equipment so simple, so intuitive, so absolutely impossible to misuse that even the most intellectually challenged beings in the universe could operate it without incident. His crowning achievement was the Universal Observation Device Mark 47, a piece of surveillance equipment so sophisticated it could monitor an entire planet while being so user-friendly that the instruction manual consisted of exactly 3 words: point, click, done. What Thorpe had not anticipated was being assigned to test his foolproof technology on the one planet in the galaxy where foolproof was apparently interpreted as a challenge. "Congratulations, Whistlesnatch," boomed his supervisor, a massive Gornathian whose enthusiasm was matched only by his complete inability to pronounce subordinates' names correctly. "You've been selected to field test the Mark 47 on Earth, home of the humans." Thorpe's 4 eye stalks drooped simultaneously. "Sir, perhaps there's been some mistake. The Mark 47 was designed for advanced civilizations. Earth is classified as barely beyond stone tools and fire-making." "Exactly. If your equipment is truly foolproof, it should work perfectly with primitives. Think of it as the ultimate stress test." "But, sir, primitive doesn't necessarily mean they'll follow basic operational parameters." "Nonsense. How much trouble could a species that hasn't even figured out interstellar travel possibly cause?" The answer, as Thorpe would discover over the following months, was all the trouble. Every possible kind of trouble, plus several new varieties of trouble that hadn't existed before humans invented them. Thorpe arrived in Earth's solar system aboard his research vessel, the perfectly reasonable assumption, equipped with enough Mark 47 devices to monitor the entire planet. The plan was elegantly simple. Deploy the devices in strategic locations, activate the foolproof monitoring systems, and spend the next year collecting data on primitive human behavior while enjoying the relaxing predictability of technology that could not possibly malfunction. The first warning sign should have been when he tried to land. His navigation computer, which had successfully guided ships across 17 different galaxies, took one look at Earth's air traffic control system and immediately had what could only be described as a nervous breakdown. "Warning," announced the ship's computer in a voice that sounded increasingly frantic. "Local transportation patterns do not conform to any known principles of logical movement. Aircraft appear to be flying in deliberately inefficient routes. Some vessels are moving in perfect circles for no apparent reason. Request immediate psychological evaluation for navigation systems." "It's probably just primitive technology," Thorpe muttered, overriding the computer and landing in what appeared to be an unused field. How complicated could their transportation systems possibly be? Within hours, he had his answer, when a human approached his ship carrying a clipboard and wearing an expression of professional annoyance that transcended species barriers. "Excuse me," the human said, "but you can't park that here without a permit." "A permit?" Thorpe consulted his universal translator, certain there had been some error. "You require documentation to exist in a specific location?" "Well, yeah. This is a designated agricultural zone. Spacecraft parking requires either a commercial vehicle permit, an extraterrestrial visitor visa, or a special event license." "How would one acquire an extraterrestrial visitor visa?" "You'd need to file Form 27B with the Department of Interplanetary Affairs." "You have a Department of Interplanetary Affairs?" "Oh, sure. It's been around since 1987, right after the Henderson incident." "The Henderson incident? Guy in Nevada claimed he was abducted by aliens. Turned out he was just really drunk and had wandered into a military test site, but by then Congress had already created the department. Bureaucracy, you know." Zirkelthorpe stared at this human, trying to process the information that Earth had created an entire government agency to handle alien contact based on a single case of mistaken identity involving intoxication and military installations. This is remarkably proactive for a primitive civilization. Primitive? The human looked offended. We've got smartphones, nuclear power, and reality TV. What more do you want? Before Zirkelthorpe could formulate a response to this bewildering list of accomplishments, more humans arrived. Unlike every other species he'd encountered, they didn't seem particularly concerned about the presence of an alien spacecraft. Instead, they appeared to be treating it as a minor inconvenience, like finding a shopping cart in their parking space. "Is this gonna take long?" asked one human. "Because I need to plant soybeans next week." "Do you need help moving it?" offered another. "My cousin has a tow truck." "You want to tow my spacecraft?" "Well, yeah. It's got to go somewhere. Can't just leave it here. Property values, you know?" Zirkelthorpe was beginning to suspect that humans operated on principles that defied not just logic, but the basic laws of rational thought. However, he had a job to do, so he politely explained that he was conducting scientific research and would only be on Earth temporarily. "Research?" The first human brightened considerably. "What kind of research?" "We get a lot of researchers here. Had a guy last year studying crop circles. Turned out they were made by Jenkins' cows getting into his moonshine again. I'm studying human behavior patterns using advanced monitoring equipment." "Oh, like Big Brother. Cool. Can we see it?" This question filled Zirkelthorpe with the kind of existential dread typically reserved for contemplating the heat death of the universe. In his experience, whenever test subjects wanted to see the monitoring equipment, things went spectacularly wrong. "I assure you, the equipment is designed to be completely unobtrusive. You won't even know it's there." "That sounds suspicious," observed the human with the tow truck cousin. "How do we know you're not government spies?" "I'm not from your government. I'm not from your planet." "That's exactly what a government spy would say." Zirkelthorpe felt his grasp on rational discourse beginning to slip. "Why would your government use alien surveillance when they could use terrestrial surveillance?" "Plausible deniability," the human replied, as if this was obvious. "If they get caught, they just blame the aliens." "But there are no other aliens here." "That you know of." "I would know. I have the most advanced detection equipment in the galaxy." Government equipment is always more advanced than civilian stuff. Zirkelthorpe realized he was trapped in a logic loop that somehow made less sense the more he tried to understand it. These humans had created a conspiracy theory about their own government using fake aliens to spy on them, while standing next to an actual alien who was trying to explain that he wasn't fake. It was like watching someone build a house of cards in a hurricane while insisting that the wind was a government conspiracy. "Look," he said desperately, "I'll show you the monitoring equipment. It's completely harmless, operates automatically, and requires no human intervention whatsoever." Famous last words in 17 different languages. The Mark 47 Universal Observation Device was, objectively speaking, a masterpiece of engineering. Roughly the size of a toaster, it could monitor electromagnetic spectrum activity, analyze behavioral patterns, record audio and visual data, and compile comprehensive reports on civilization development, all while being virtually invisible to the subjects under observation. The instruction manual, as mentioned, consisted of 3 words. The device had exactly one button. Press the button, and it would automatically configure itself for optimal monitoring of local conditions. But Zirkelthorpe had tested it on 43 different worlds with 43 different species. In every single case, the beings under observation had never even noticed the device existed. Humans noticed it immediately, and their first instinct was to improve it. "This is pretty cool," said the farmer, examining the device from every angle. "But wouldn't it work better if it was higher up? The height is automatically optimized. Berserklethorpe began. Jimmy, grab your ladder. We'll mount this thing on the barn roof. No, please. The device calculates optimal positioning automatically. But what if it needs a better antenna? My radio gets terrible reception until I added that coat hanger to the antenna. It doesn't need... Wait, what are you doing? The human had produced what appeared to be a collection of metal objects from his pocket and was examining the device's surface. Looking for the antenna input. All electronic stuff has antenna inputs. This device uses quantum entangled particle detection. It doesn't need an antenna. Everything needs an antenna. How else would it receive signals? Berserklethorpe watched in horror as the human began attaching various metal objects to his precision-engineered surveillance device. A paperclip here, a piece of wire there, what appeared to be a small kitchen utensil somehow became involved. Stop! Please! You're going to... The device activated. Now, under normal circumstances, the Mark 47's activation was a subtle affair. A few barely detectable energy fluctuations, perhaps a quiet hum that would fade below audible range within seconds. The device would then begin its monitoring functions with the discretion of a shadow and the efficiency of a Swiss timepiece. What happened instead was that the human's improvements had somehow turned Berserklethorpe's sophisticated monitoring device into what could best be described as a disco ball crossed with a fog machine that had learned to yodel. Lights flashed. Sounds emerged that defied classification by any known acoustic principles. The device began spinning while emitting clouds of what appeared to be glittery smoke and playing what Berserklethorpe's universal translator could only render as alien dubstep. "Awesome!" shouted the human over the cacophony. "It's like a rave! Can you make it do different colors?" "Turn it off!" Berserklethorpe screamed, lunging for the device. "You've destroyed 17 centuries of engineering." "Turn it off? Are you kidding? This is the coolest thing I've ever seen! Hey, Martha, come look at this!" More humans appeared, as if summoned by some primitive communication network. Within minutes, Berserklethorpe found himself surrounded by dozens of humans, all offering suggestions for further improvements to his monitoring device. "You know what this needs?" said one human. "Bluetooth connectivity." "Bluetooth?" Berserklethorpe's voice cracked. "So you can control it with your phone. Everything has Bluetooth now." "My phone doesn't. I don't have a phone. This device operates on principles that..." "Oh, you need a phone. Here, I've got an old one you can have." A human pressed a rectangular object into Berserklethorpe's appendages. "It's just a basic smartphone, only 3 years old." Berserklethorpe stared at the device. According to his calculations, the computational power required to operate a basic smartphone shouldn't exist on Earth for at least another 1,000 years. Yet here was a human casually handing him what appeared to be a handheld quantum computer, describing it as just basic. How do you have this technology?" "What, smartphones? Everybody has smartphones. My grandmother has one, and she's 93. Your grandmother carries a quantum computing device?" "Quantum? Nah, it's just a regular Android. Although she did download some app that supposedly uses quantum encryption. Complete scam, probably, but she likes the little lock icon." Berserklethorpe felt his worldview crumbling like a sandcastle in a tsunami. These humans had somehow developed technology that his civilization considered cutting edge, then dismissed it as just basic, and given it to their elderly relatives to play with. Meanwhile, his Mark 47 device continued its spectacular malfunction, now apparently playing requests from the growing crowd of humans who had gathered to watch the light show. "Can you make it play Sweet Caroline?" someone shouted. "What about techno? I love techno. Does it do karaoke?" "Karaoke?" Berserklethorpe's voice reached frequencies that registered on several nearby radio telescopes. "It's a precision scientific instrument, not an entertainment device." "Everything's an entertainment device if you use it right," observed one human sagely, and that, Berserklethorpe realized, was the fundamental problem. Humans didn't use technology the way it was designed to be used. They used it the way they wanted to use it, regardless of original intention, design specifications, or the basic laws of physics. It took 6 hours to convince the humans to let him retrieve his malfunctioning device. By that point, they had somehow managed to connect it to the internet, uploaded videos of it to something called YouTube, and started a crowdfunding campaign to mass-produce what they were calling the Alien Disco Ball of Awesome. The campaign raised $47,000 in the first hour. "You could make a fortune with this thing," the farmer told him earnestly. "People would pay good money for alien technology that throws a party." "It's not supposed to throw a party. It's supposed to monitor behavioral patterns." "Well, it's definitely doing that. Look how many people showed up. Best behavioral monitoring ever." Berserklethorpe looked around at the crowd of humans who were still dancing to the alien dubstep emanating from his destroyed equipment, and realized that the human was technically correct. The device had successfully attracted subjects for behavioral monitoring. It had just done so in the most spectacularly inappropriate way possible. "This is a disaster," he muttered. "Are you kidding? This is the best thing that's happened to this town since we got the new Dairy Queen. You should set up more of these things." The suggestion filled Berserklethorpe with a terror so profound that his exoskeleton began to molt prematurely. The thought of deploying 47 more Mark 47 devices, each one potentially subject to human improvement, was like contemplating a universe where entropy flowed backwards and mathematics had developed a sense of humor. But he had a job to complete, and he had 46 more devices in his ship. Against every instinct screaming warnings in his brain, Berserklethorpe decided to try a different approach. Instead of allowing humans to directly interact with his equipment, he would deploy the devices secretly in locations where they couldn't possibly be discovered or modified. This plan lasted approximately 18 minutes. The first device, hidden in what appeared to be an abandoned building in downtown Portland, was discovered by someone called an urban explorer, who immediately assumed it was either government surveillance or alien technology, and posted detailed photographs on social media, along with GPS coordinates and an invitation for others to come check out this weird alien thing. The second device, carefully concealed in a remote forest location, was found by a group called geocachers, who were apparently engaged in an elaborate treasure hunting game that involved using GPS technology to find hidden objects that other people had left in random locations for no apparent reason, except the joy of finding them. "This is the best geocache ever," exclaimed the leader of the group, an enthusiastic human female who had somehow tracked down Berserklethorpe's carefully hidden device within hours of deployment. "It's way more high-tech than usual. Did you program it to do all these light patterns?" "Light patterns?" Berserklethorpe queried weakly. "Yeah, it's flashing in this really complex sequence. Looks almost like code. Are we supposed to decode it to find the next cache?" Berserklethorpe looked at his device, which was indeed flashing in complex patterns. According to his readings, it was attempting to establish communication protocols with a local Wi-Fi network that someone had apparently set up in the middle of the forest. "Why is there Wi-Fi in the forest?" he asked. "Oh, that's Frank's network. He lives off-grid, but still needs internet for his cryptocurrency mining operation. He hacked together this mesh network that covers like 50 square miles. Pretty impressive for a guy who lives in a converted school bus." Berserklethorpe felt a familiar sensation that he was beginning to associate with extended exposure to human civilization. The feeling that reality had become negotiable and logic was more of a suggestion than a requirement. Someone lives in a school bus in the forest while mining cryptocurrency using a mesh network. Frank's kind of eccentric. He used to be a Google engineer before he decided that modern society was too stressful. Now he makes artisanal soap and trades digital currency. Seems happy enough. The concept that someone could simultaneously reject modern society while participating in its most advanced technological developments while living in a converted vehicle while making soap was so paradoxical that Berserklethorpe's translator required several minutes of processing time to even render it in his native language. Is this typical human behavior? What, Frank? Nah, Frank's pretty unusual. Most people who go off-grid don't bother with the cryptocurrency stuff. So there are other humans who live in vehicles in the forest? Oh, sure. Tiny house movement, van life, converted buses, all sorts of stuff. There's this whole community of people who decided they wanted to live simply, so they equipped their vehicles with solar panels, satellite internet, and gourmet kitchens. Berserklethorpe's understanding of human logic took another severe blow. They want to live simply, so they install complex technology? Well, yeah, but it's their own complex technology, not someone else's. Totally different thing. By this point, Berserklethorpe's Mark 47 device had apparently established full communication with Frank's mesh network and was downloading what appeared to be the entire internet. The device's memory banks, designed to store behavioral observation data for a full year, were filling up with something his scanner identified as cat videos and cryptocurrency tutorials. Make it stop, Berserklethorpe pleaded. Stop what? It's working great. Look, it's even got Netflix now. The human was correct. Somehow Berserklethorpe's sophisticated surveillance device had been converted into a streaming media player and was currently displaying something called The Office on its holographic projection system. This isn't what it's designed for, but it's what it's good for. Sometimes the best use for something isn't what it was originally designed for, like bubble wrap was invented as wallpaper, but everybody uses it to pop bubbles because that's way more fun. Bubble wrap was invented as wallpaper? Yeah, but it was terrible wallpaper. Great for popping, though. Same principle applies here. This thing probably sucks as surveillance equipment, but it's fantastic as a portable entertainment center. Berserklethorpe wanted to argue that his device was actually excellent surveillance equipment when used correctly, but he was beginning to suspect that correctly might be a relative concept when dealing with humans. Over the following days, word spread through human communication networks about the alien devices that had appeared in various locations. Rather than avoiding them or reporting them to authorities, humans began actively seeking them out, modifying them, and sharing their discoveries online. Each device was improved in different ways. Some became art installations, others turned into community message boards. One enterprising human had somehow converted a Mark 47 into a coffee shop's Wi-Fi hotspot and customer management system. It's got a built-in queue management system, the coffee shop owner explained proudly. Customers use their phones to order, and the alien thingy calls them when their drink is ready. Plus, it plays this amazing ambient music that makes everyone feel really peaceful and happy. Berserklethorpe examined his device, which was indeed managing coffee shop operations with impressive efficiency, while generating what his scanner identified as therapeutic harmonic frequencies. Somehow, human modifications had unlocked capabilities that he hadn't even known the device possessed. How did you know it could do this? We didn't. We just started pressing buttons and connecting stuff to see what would happen. Trial and error, you know. That's how most human technology gets developed. Trial and error. Don't you use systematic engineering principles? The human laughed. Sometimes. But a lot of our best discoveries happened by accident. Penicillin, microwave ovens, post-it notes, the internet. Half of human civilization exists because somebody was trying to do one thing and accidentally discovered something completely different. This revelation struck Berserklethorpe like a meteor impact. Human technological development wasn't based on careful planning and systematic research. It was based on curiosity, experimentation, and the willingness to try things just to see what would happen. They had accidentally innovated their way into advanced civilization. That's completely insane. Yeah, but it works. Look at your devices. We've got them doing all sorts of useful stuff that you never thought of. Sometimes an outside perspective is exactly what you need. Zirkelthorpe spent the next week visiting each of his deployed devices, documenting the various ways humans had improved them. The results were unlike anything in his 17 centuries of engineering experience. Device number 3 had become part of an urban farming project, using its sensors to monitor soil conditions, weather patterns, and plant growth while providing real-time data to farmers across the city through an app that someone had developed in their spare time. Device number 7 was being used by a group of amateur astronomers who had somehow figured out how to use its quantum sensors to detect exoplanets with greater precision than most professional observatories. Device number 12 had been integrated into a smart home system and was controlling lights, temperature, security, and entertainment for an entire apartment building, while also serving as a community bulletin board and lost and found system. Each modification revealed capabilities that Zirkelthorpe had never intended, never programmed, and never imagined possible. The humans weren't just using his devices differently, they were discovering potential that he hadn't known existed. How? He asked the amateur astronomers who had turned his surveillance device into a planet-hunting instrument. How did you know it could detect exoplanets? We didn't, replied their leader, a retired physics teacher named Dr. Henderson. We were just playing around with the settings and noticed it was picking up these weird periodic signals. Took us a while to figure out what they were. But the quantum resonance calculations alone should have taken months to work out. Oh, we didn't do any calculations. We just fed the data into an AI and asked it to find patterns. The AI figured out the math part. You have artificial intelligence? Well, sort of. It's really just machine learning algorithms, but they're pretty good at finding patterns in large data sets. Nothing fancy. Zirkelthorpe's worldview shifted again. Humans had developed artificial intelligence, or something functionally equivalent, and they were using it casually, almost carelessly, to solve problems they couldn't solve themselves. This AI, is it self-aware? Nah, it's just really good at statistics. Although it did write some surprisingly decent poetry last week when we asked it to analyze Shakespeare. But that's probably just pattern matching. It writes poetry. Yeah, want to hear some? It's actually not bad. Dr. Henderson pulled out his smartphone, his personal quantum computing device that he carried around like it was nothing special, and began reading poetry composed by an artificial intelligence that he described as nothing fancy. The poetry was beautiful. Complex, emotionally resonant, technically sophisticated. It was the kind of creative output that most civilizations didn't achieve until they had been studying art and literature for millennia. This is impossible, Zirkelthorpe whispered. What, the poetry? Yeah, we were surprised too. But the AI has access to pretty much all of human literature, so it's got a lot to work with. Plus, it doesn't get stuck thinking about things the way humans do, so it comes up with some pretty interesting combinations. Zirkelthorpe was beginning to realize that his understanding of technological development had been fundamentally flawed. He had always assumed that advancement followed a predictable pattern: basic tools, then simple machines, then complex systems, then artificial intelligence, then advanced robotics, then space travel. Humans had apparently decided that this sequence was merely a suggestion. They had developed some technologies to incredible levels while completely ignoring others. They had artificial intelligence that could write poetry, but still used chemical combustion to launch rockets. They had global communication networks, but couldn't agree on measurement systems. They were advanced and primitive simultaneously, logical and irrational, sophisticated and crude. They were everything and nothing like what he expected from an intelligent species. Dr. Henderson, Zirkelthorpe said carefully, what do you think the purpose of intelligence is? The retired physics teacher considered this question seriously. I suppose to understand things, to solve problems, to make life better for ourselves and others. And how do you determine if you're succeeding? Well, are we happy? Are we learning new things? Are we helping each other? Are we creating something beautiful or useful or meaningful? Doctor. Henderson gestured toward the modified alien device, which was quietly continuing its planet-hunting mission, while simultaneously serving as a focal point for a community of amateur scientists who gathered each week to share discoveries and learn from each other. Look at this thing. None of us really understands how it works, but we figured out how to make it do something amazing, and now we're finding planets that nobody knew existed. And we're doing it together, sharing data and ideas and excitement about what we might discover next. The old teacher smiled. I think that might be the most human thing of all, taking something we don't understand and making it into something wonderful anyway. Zirkelthorpe felt something shift inside his consciousness. For 17 centuries, he had been obsessed with creating technology that was predictable, controllable, foolproof. He had designed systems that worked exactly as intended, nothing more and nothing less. But humans had taken his predictable, controllable technology and transformed it into something unpredictable, uncontrollable, and infinitely more capable than he had ever imagined possible. They had made it better by making it less perfect. Dr. Henderson, may I ask you something personal? Sure. Are you happy? The old man considered this. You know, I think I am. I spent 30 years teaching physics to teenagers who mostly didn't care about physics. It was frustrating sometimes. But then I retired, and I thought I'd be bored. Instead, I found this group of people who love science just as much as I do, and we're discovering things that no one has ever seen before. I'm learning something new every day, and I'm 74 years old. He looked up at the sky, where invisible planets orbited distant stars. How can you not be happy when you're part of something like that? Zirkelthorpe spent the next several weeks traveling around Earth, observing how humans had modified his other devices. Each modification told a similar story. Humans taking technology they didn't fully understand and transforming it into something more useful, more beautiful, or more meaningful than the original design. They weren't better engineers than he was. They weren't more intelligent or more knowledgeable. But they had something he was beginning to realize. His own civilization had lost somewhere along the path to perfect efficiency. They had curiosity without fear, creativity without constraints, and the willingness to try impossible things just to see what would happen. More importantly, they did these things together. Every modification, every improvement, every discovery was shared freely with anyone who was interested. They built on each other's work, learned from each other's mistakes, and celebrated each other's successes. They had turned technology into a community activity. This is wrong, Zirkelthorpe muttered to himself as he watched a group of humans collaboratively troubleshooting a problem with device number 23, which they had somehow converted into a water purification system for a small village. This violates every principle of intellectual property, systematic development, and controlled innovation. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't really wrong. It was different, and different he was beginning to suspect might be exactly what the galaxy needed. His supervisor contacted him at the end of his 3rd month on Earth. Whizzle snatch! How goes the testing? I trust the Mark 47s are performing flawlessly? Zirkelthorpe looked around his temporary headquarters, which had become something of a community center where humans gathered to share their latest modifications to his foolproof devices. The walls were covered with diagrams, equations, and artistic renderings of impossible machines that somehow worked anyway. The devices are performing, he said carefully. Excellent. Any problems with the primitive humans misusing the equipment? Zirkelthorpe watched through his window as a group of children used device number 31 to create a holographic playground that existed in 3 dimensions simultaneously while teaching them advanced mathematics through play. Their laughter filled the air as they solved equations that most of his civilization's greatest minds would find challenging. No problems with misuse, sir. Outstanding. I knew the Mark 47 was truly foolproof, so you'll be returning with a full data set proving the superiority of our engineering principles. Berserklethorpe considered the question. His data set certainly proved something, but he wasn't sure it was the superiority of his engineering principles. Sir, I need to extend my mission timeline. Extend it? Whatever for? Surely 3 months is sufficient to prove that primitive beings can operate foolproof technology. I'm discovering some unexpected complications with the concept of foolproof technology. Complications. Whistle-snatch. The Mark 47 is the culmination of 17 centuries of refinement. What complications could there possibly be? Berserklethorpe looked around his headquarters again. Every surface was covered with evidence of human ingenuity, creativity, and collaborative problem-solving. These primitive beings had taken his ultimate achievement in foolproof design and used it as a starting point for innovations that challenged everything he thought he knew about technology, intelligence, and the purpose of engineering itself. Sir, I think we may need to reconsider our definition of foolproof. Reconsider. Preposterous. Foolproof means that no fool can possibly break it or misuse it. But what if the fools aren't really fools? What if they're just different kinds of smart? There was a long pause on the communication channel. Whistle-snatch. Have you been eating local food? I've heard that primitive nutrition can affect cognitive function. No, sir. I've been very careful about contamination. It's just, these humans have done things with my devices that I never imagined possible. Things that work better than the original design. Things that serve purposes I never considered. That's impossible. The Mark 47 is optimized for maximum efficiency across all possible use cases. But they've found use cases that aren't possible, sir. They've made the impossible possible by ignoring the fact that it should be impossible. Another long pause. Whistle-snatch. I'm sending a relief team to extract you immediately. You're clearly suffering from some form of cultural contamination. Sir, please, just give me more time. I think I'm on the verge of a breakthrough that could revolutionize how we think about engineering. The only breakthrough you need is breaking away from whatever delusions those primitives have infected you with. The relief team will arrive in 72 hours. Pack your equipment and prepare for immediate departure. The communication ended, leaving Berserklethorpe alone with the realization that he had 72 hours to decide between the career he had spent 17 centuries building and the possibility that everything he had believed about intelligence, technology, and progress might be wrong. He walked outside where several humans were gathered around device No. 15, discussing some new modification they wanted to try. They waved at him cheerfully, as they had every day since his arrival. They had never asked him for anything except his opinion, never demanded explanations he couldn't give, and never made him feel unwelcome, despite the fact that he was literally an alien who had invaded their planet with surveillance equipment. "Hey, Bizarre!" called out Maria Santos, a local engineer who had become something of an expert on modifying his devices. "We're trying to figure out if we can use this thing to help with the community garden. Think it might be able to analyze soil composition." I don't know," Berserklethorpe admitted. "I never designed it for agricultural applications." "That's okay. We'll figure it out together. Want to help?" And there it was, the fundamental difference between his civilization and theirs. When his people encountered something they didn't understand, they studied it until they could control it completely. When humans encountered something they didn't understand, they played with it until they could make it do something useful. More importantly, they did it together. They shared knowledge freely, built on each other's ideas, and treated every problem as an opportunity for collaborative discovery. "Maria," Berserklethorpe said slowly, "what would you do if your government told you to stop experimenting with these devices?" She looked puzzled. "Why would they do that? We're not hurting anyone. If anything, we're making things better for the community. But what if they said the experiments were dangerous, or that you didn't have the proper authorization?" Maria shrugged. Then I guess we'd have to think about whether they were right. But these things have been helping people for months now. The device at the school is teaching kids about science in ways that actually make sense to them. The one at the hospital is helping doctors detect problems earlier. The community garden one is going to help us grow food more efficiently. She gestured toward the small crowd of people gathered around the device, ranging from teenagers to elderly folks, all contributing ideas and enthusiasm to the project. How could anyone look at all the good we're doing and think it should stop? Berserklethorpe felt something crack inside his chest. These humans weren't just modifying his technology. They were living according to principles that his entire civilization had forgotten. They prioritized effectiveness over efficiency, collaboration over control, innovation over safety, and they were happier for it. Maria, can I tell you something? Sure. I'm not supposed to be here much longer. My supervisors want me to return home. Oh, her face fell. Will you take the devices with you? I don't know. Technically, they belong to my organization, but we've put so much work into making them useful, and they're helping so many people. Other humans had overheard the conversation and were gathering around. Dr. Henderson arrived, along with the amateur astronomers. The coffee shop owner came over from across the street. The teacher, who had been using device number 8 to revolutionize her classroom, appeared with several of her students. "You can't take them now," said one of the students, a teenager who had used the devices to create an art installation that somehow also functioned as a community weather monitoring system. "They're part of the community. We've integrated them into everything," explained the coffee shop owner. "Half the local businesses rely on the networking capabilities. The community garden project feeds 40 families. The school program has tripled science test scores. But more than that," added Dr. D. Henderson, "they've brought us together. Before these devices appeared, I barely knew my neighbors. Now we have this amazing community of people working together, learning together, discovering things together." Berserklethorpe looked around at the faces surrounding him. These weren't his people, weren't even his species, but somewhere over the past 3 months, they had become important to him. Their enthusiasm, their creativity, their willingness to accept him despite his obvious alienness. It had all combined to create something he had never experienced before. He had found a place where he belonged. "There might be a way," he said slowly, "but it would mean I could never go home." "What do you mean?" Maria asked. "If I refuse to return with my supervisors, I'll be considered a rogue agent. I'll lose access to my civilization's resources, my career, everything I've worked for. But the devices would stay here, with you." The humans exchanged glances. "That's a huge sacrifice," Dr. Henderson said quietly. "Are you sure?" Berserklethorpe thought about his sterile laboratory back home, where he had spent 17 centuries creating perfect technology that no one was allowed to modify or improve. He thought about his colleagues, who valued efficiency over creativity and control over collaboration. He thought about a civilization so advanced that it had forgotten how to be surprised by anything. Then he looked at the humans around him, at their eager faces and innovative minds and generous hearts. He thought about the impossible things they had accomplished with his foolproof technology. He thought about the joy of discovery, the excitement of collaboration, the satisfaction of building something meaningful together. "Yes," he said, "I'm sure." The cheer that went up from the crowd could probably be heard from orbit. 72 hours later, when the relief ship arrived, Berserklethorpe was waiting for them in the same field where he had first landed. But he wasn't alone. "Greetings," he said to his former supervisor as the Gornathian emerged from the transport. "I regret to inform you that I will not be returning with you." "Whistlesnatch! What is the meaning of this? Where are your devices?" "The devices are exactly where they should be, with beings who can appreciate their full potential." "Preposterous! Those primitive humans couldn't possibly understand advanced technology." "You're right," Berserklethorpe replied calmly. "They don't understand it. They do something much more valuable. They improve it. Impossible! The Mark 47 is already perfectly optimized. So I thought. But the humans have made modifications that increase efficiency by 300%, while adding capabilities I never imagined possible. Show me these alleged improvements. Zirkelthorpe gestured toward the crowd of humans who had gathered to witness the confrontation. Show him, he said simply. What followed was perhaps the most extraordinary technology demonstration in galactic history. The humans, with the enthusiasm of children showing off their favorite toys, proceeded to display every modification they had made to the Mark 47 devices. They showed how device number 3 had revolutionized urban farming by providing real-time analysis of soil conditions, weather patterns, and plant health, while coordinating with a network of automated systems to optimize growing conditions across the entire city. They demonstrated how device number 7 had discovered 17 new exoplanets, while serving as the hub for a citizen science network that had grown to include amateur astronomers from 6 different continents. They explained how device number 12 had become the backbone of a smart city initiative that managed traffic flow, energy distribution, and emergency services, while somehow also serving as a community art installation that reflected the mood and activities of the neighborhood in real time. Each demonstration was more impossible than the last. The humans had taken his carefully designed, narrowly focused surveillance equipment and transformed it into everything. Communication hubs, artistic installations, scientific instruments, educational tools, community organizers, entertainment systems, and devices whose functions defied easy categorization. "This is madness," the Gornathian supervisor whispered as he watched a group of children use one of the devices to create 3-dimensional mathematical sculptures that also functioned as playground equipment and somehow taught advanced calculus through play. "No," Zirkelthorpe replied, "this is genius. We've been thinking too small." "Too small? We've achieved perfect technological efficiency. But what's the point of perfect efficiency if it prevents growth? These humans have taken my devices and made them into something I never could have imagined. They've discovered capabilities that exist beyond the boundaries of planned design. That's chaos. That's uncontrolled. That's evolution," interrupted Dr. Henderson, who had been listening to the conversation. "Technology isn't just tools, it's ideas. And ideas grow and change and combine in unexpected ways when you give them room to breathe." The old teacher smiled at the alien supervisor. "Your engineer created something wonderful." But he was thinking like an engineer. We're not engineers. We're users, dreamers, problem solvers, artists, teachers, farmers, musicians, parents. We saw his wonderful creation and thought, what else could this do? How could it help? How could it bring us together? How could it make life better? But systematic development requires controlled parameters, the supervisor protested. "Sure, for some things," Maria Santos agreed, joining the conversation, "but not for everything. Some of the best discoveries happen when you stop trying to control everything and start paying attention to what's actually happening." She gestured toward device number 15, which had indeed been successfully modified to analyze soil composition while also serving as a weather monitoring station, a community bulletin board, and a Wi-Fi hotspot for the local farmers market. "We didn't plan for it to do all those things, but as we were working with it, we noticed it could do more than just soil analysis. So we experimented, we tried things, we built on each other's discoveries. And now we have something that's more useful than anything we could have planned." The Gornathian supervisor turned to Zirkelthorpe with an expression of barely contained exasperation. "And you want to abandon 17 centuries of systematic engineering development for this random experimentation?" "Not abandon," Zirkelthorpe replied thoughtfully. "Evolve. We've become so focused on creating perfect technology that we've forgotten why we create technology in the first place. To solve problems efficiently, to improve life." Berserklethorpe corrected, and these humans have shown me that the best way to improve life isn't always the most efficient way. Sometimes it's the most creative way. Sometimes it's the most collaborative way. Sometimes it's the most joyful way. He looked around at the humans who had become his friends, colleagues, and collaborators over the past 3 months. They had taught him things that 17 centuries of advanced education hadn't even touched on. They had shown him possibilities he had never considered and ways of thinking he had never imagined. Most importantly, they had shown him what it felt like to be part of something larger than himself. "I'm staying," he announced. "These humans need someone who understands both technologies, theirs and ours. I can help bridge that gap. I can learn from them while sharing what I know. Together, we might discover things that neither of our civilizations could achieve alone." The supervisor's face went through several colors that didn't exist in most species' visual spectrum. "This is career suicide. You'll be blacklisted from every technological organization in the galaxy." "Good," Berserklethorpe replied with surprising calm. "I've spent 17 centuries trying to create technology that couldn't be improved. These humans have taught me that the best technology is technology that inspires improvement. But your legacy, your reputation, your contributions to galactic civilization—" Berserklethorpe looked at the children playing with mathematical playground equipment that taught calculus through joy, at the farmers sharing data that would help feed their communities more effectively, at the amateur astronomers whose hobby had become a source of genuine scientific discovery, at the artists whose installations also functioned as community infrastructure. "I think this might be my greatest contribution to galactic civilization," he said quietly. "Learning from beings who never forgot that technology should serve life, not the other way around." The Gornathian supervisor made several more attempts to convince Berserklethorpe to return, ranging from threats to bribes to appeals to professional loyalty. Nothing worked. Berserklethorpe had made his decision. Finally, in a last-ditch effort to salvage the mission, the supervisor offered a compromise. "What if we establish a permanent research station here? You could study the humans officially, with full support from home." "No!" Berserklethorpe replied firmly. "That would change everything. The moment you turn this into official research, it stops being collaborative discovery and becomes exploitation. These humans shared their knowledge freely with me because they saw me as a partner, not as a researcher studying specimens. But the potential for technological advancement will happen naturally, through genuine cooperation and mutual respect. Or it won't happen at all, and that's fine too. Some things are more important than technological advancement. What could possibly be more important than advancing civilization?" Berserklethorpe smiled, an expression that looked quite odd on his alien features, but somehow seemed perfectly natural in that moment. Being civilized. The relief ship departed that evening, carrying only the supervisor and a report that would undoubtedly cause considerable consternation in the halls of galactic bureaucracy. Berserklethorpe watched it disappear into the star-filled sky, feeling simultaneously liberated and terrified. He had given up everything he thought he wanted for something he hadn't known he needed. "Having second thoughts?" Dr. Henderson asked, joining him in his observation of the departing ship. "No," Berserklethorpe replied honestly, "but I am having first thoughts about a lot of things I never thought about before." Such as? What does it mean to have a home? I've lived on 17 different planets, but I was always just visiting, always observing, always separate. Here, for the first time, I feel like I belong somewhere. Dr. Henderson nodded thoughtfully. Home isn't where you're from. It's where you're accepted for who you are and encouraged to become who you could be. Over the following months, Berserklethorpe settled into his new life as Earth's only permanent alien resident. He established a small workshop where he helped humans understand the principles behind his technology while learning about human engineering approaches in return. The collaboration proved even more fruitful than anyone had expected. Zirkelthorpe's systematic knowledge, combined with human creativity and innovation, led to breakthroughs that benefited both technologies. They developed new approaches to energy distribution, communication systems, medical devices, and educational tools. More importantly, they developed new approaches to collaboration itself. The workshop became a model for how different kinds of intelligence could work together, combining systematic knowledge with creative problem-solving, individual expertise with collective wisdom. "You know what I find most remarkable?" Zirkelthorpe said to Maria during one of their weekly project meetings. "We've created something that's more than the sum of our parts. Your creativity pushes me to think beyond my assumptions. My systematic knowledge gives you new tools to express your creativity. Together, we discover things that neither of us could have found alone." "That's the best kind of partnership," Maria replied, "when everyone brings something different to the table, but everyone also leaves with more than they brought." The workshop attracted visitors from around the world: scientists, artists, engineers, teachers, students, and curious individuals who simply wanted to understand how human and alien approaches to problem-solving could complement each other. It became a hub of innovation and discovery that operated on principles of open collaboration and shared knowledge. Most surprisingly, it attracted attention from other alien civilizations. "We've been monitoring your progress," explained Quelnock Thrimblebottom, an ambassador from the Viridian Science Collective who had arrived unannounced one morning. "Your reports about human innovation have caused quite a stir in academic circles." "I haven't been filing reports," Zirkelthorpe replied, confused. "Not official reports, no, but your former supervisor has been sharing his observations of what you're doing here. The impossible technological developments, the unconventional approaches to problem-solving, the collaborative methods that somehow produce results that exceed individual capabilities." Quelnock gestured toward the workshop, where humans and Zirkelthorpe were currently working together on a project that combined alien energy principles with human architectural design to create buildings that somehow generated more power than they consumed, while also serving as art installations and community gathering spaces. "We're seeing innovations that challenge everything we thought we knew about technological development. We want to understand how this is possible." "It's possible because humans don't know it's impossible," Zirkelthorpe replied. "They approach problems without preconceptions about what can and can't work. They're willing to try things that seem absurd because sometimes absurd ideas lead to breakthrough discoveries. But surely systematic approaches are more reliable, more predictable perhaps, but not necessarily more effective. Humans have taught me that the most important innovations often come from the intersection of different approaches, different perspectives, different ways of thinking." Quelnock spent several days observing the workshop's activities, interviewing both humans and Zirkelthorpe about their collaborative methods. The ambassador's initial skepticism gradually transformed into something approaching wonder. "This is remarkable," Quelnock admitted finally. "You've created an environment where systematic knowledge and creative experimentation enhance each other rather than competing with each other." "That's the key," agreed Dr. Henderson, who had become something of an expert on human-alien collaboration. "Most civilizations seem to treat different approaches as mutually exclusive. You're either systematic or creative, logical or intuitive, efficient or innovative. But humans tend to think in terms of both and rather than either or. Both systematic and creative? Why not? Different problems require different tools. Sometimes you need careful analysis and systematic development. Sometimes you need wild creativity and bold experimentation. Most of the time you need both. But how do you know which approach to use when? Dr. Henderson smiled. You try both and see what works. Then you try them together and see if that works even better. This conversation led to the establishment of the first interspecies collaborative research initiative, with Earth serving as the pilot location for experiments in combining different approaches to technological development. Representatives from dozens of alien civilizations arrived to participate in workshops, contribute their expertise, and learn from human approaches to innovation. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. Projects that had stalled for decades in traditional research environments suddenly produced breakthrough results when approached through collaborative human-alien partnerships. Technologies that had seemed impossible became merely challenging when viewed through the lens of human optimism and alien systematic knowledge. It's not that humans are better at innovation, Berserklethorpe explained to a gathering of alien researchers who had come to understand the Earth method of technological development. It's that they approach innovation differently. Most of our civilizations develop technology to solve specific problems efficiently. Humans develop technology to explore possibilities creatively. What's the difference? Asked a Centaurian engineer. When we design something, we ask, how can we make this work as intended? When humans design something, they ask, what else might this do? Our question leads to predictable, optimized results. Their question leads to unexpected discoveries and novel applications. But predictable results are more valuable than unexpected discoveries. Are they? How many of our greatest technological advances came from unexpected discoveries during research into completely different problems? The Centaurian engineer paused, considering this question. Most of the major breakthroughs in their civilization's history had indeed come from serendipitous discoveries during unrelated research projects. So you're suggesting we should deliberately seek unexpected results? I'm suggesting we should create environments where unexpected results can flourish when they occur naturally. Humans excel at this because they're comfortable with uncertainty, willing to experiment, and eager to share discoveries even when they don't fully understand them. The conversation continued for hours, touching on fundamental questions about the nature of intelligence, the purpose of technology, and the role of collaboration in advancing civilization. It became clear that humans offered something unique to the galactic community, a different way of thinking about progress itself. Most civilizations measure progress in terms of efficiency gains and problem-solving capabilities, observed Berserklethorpe. Humans measure progress in terms of possibility expansion and life enhancement. Both approaches have value, but combining them creates something more powerful than either alone. As the Interspecies Collaborative Research Initiative expanded, Earth became a hub for the kind of innovative thinking that had been missing from galactic civilization for millennia. The combination of human creativity and alien systematic knowledge led to developments in energy, medicine, communication, transportation, and fields that hadn't existed before the collaborations began. More importantly, it led to developments in understanding itself. Humans and aliens learned from each other not just about technology, but about different ways of experiencing existence, different approaches to community, different definitions of success and fulfillment. You know what I've realized, Berserklethorpe said to Maria during one of their evening walks through the city, past the various human-alien collaborative projects that had transformed the urban landscape into something that was both more functional and more beautiful than it had been before. What's that? I came here to test my foolproof technology, convinced that the best engineering was engineering that couldn't be improved. But humans taught me that the best engineering is engineering that inspires improvement. Meaning, the Mark 47 devices weren't perfect because they worked exactly as designed. They became perfect when you made them into something better than I had designed. The true test of good technology isn't whether it can resist modification. It's whether it can serve as a foundation for innovations that surpass the original. Maria smiled. So your foolproof technology wasn't really foolproof at all? No, Berserklethorpe replied, returning her smile with his own alien equivalent. It was something much better. It was fool-inspiring. It made people want to tinker with it, improve it, discover new possibilities within it. They paused to watch a group of children playing in a park where one of the modified devices had been transformed into an interactive educational installation that taught physics through play while also serving as a community art project and a data collection hub for climate research. The children don't know they're learning advanced physics, Maria observed. The best learning often happens when you don't realize you're learning, Zirkelthorpe agreed. Humans understand this intuitively. You make education feel like play, work feel like collaboration, technology feel like magic. Is that why you stayed? Because we made your serious scientific equipment feel like magic. Zirkelthorpe considered this question carefully. I stayed because humans taught me that the most serious scientific work should feel like magic. Wonder, curiosity, excitement, discovery, these aren't obstacles to systematic research. They're the fuel that makes systematic research worthwhile. As they continued their walk, passing the coffee shop where device number 21 had become the heart of a community networking system, the school where device number 8 had revolutionized education, and the hospital where device number 19 had improved diagnostic capabilities, while somehow also making the waiting room a more pleasant place to be, Zirkelthorpe reflected on everything that had changed since his arrival on Earth. He had lost his career, his connection to his home civilization, and his certainty about the nature of intelligence and progress. In return, he had gained a community, a purpose, and an understanding of possibilities he had never imagined. It was, he realized, the best trade he had ever made. Maria, he said as they reached the workshop, where tomorrow they would begin work on a new project combining alien materials, science with human sustainable architecture principles. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had succeeded in creating truly foolproof technology? You mean if we hadn't been able to modify your devices? Exactly. If they had worked exactly as designed and nothing more. Maria thought about this. I guess we would have learned about your civilization's approach to problem solving, which would have been interesting, but we wouldn't have learned how to combine your approach with ours. We wouldn't have discovered all these new possibilities. We wouldn't have built this amazing collaborative community. She looked at Zirkelthorpe with an expression of genuine affection. And you wouldn't have become part of our community. You'd just be another researcher studying us from a distance. Oui. So my failure to create foolproof technology led to something better than foolproof technology? Your failure to create foolproof technology led to fool collaborative technology. And that's turned out to be much more valuable than foolproof anything. As they entered the workshop, where tomorrow's projects waited alongside the tools and materials and ideas that had accumulated through months of human-alien collaboration, Zirkelthorpe realized that he had finally discovered the answer to the question that had driven 17 centuries of engineering refinement. The goal wasn't to create technology that couldn't be improved. The goal was to create technology that inspired improvement. Not devices that resisted modification, but devices that invited collaboration. Not systems that prevented mistakes, but systems that transformed mistakes into discoveries. He had spent his entire career trying to eliminate the human element from technology. But the human element, he now understood, wasn't a bug to be fixed. It was the feature that made technology truly valuable. Tomorrow, he said to Maria as they began reviewing plans for their next project, let's see what impossible thing we can make possible. Sounds perfect, Maria replied. After all, impossible is just another word for something that nobody's figured out how to do yet. Zirkelthorpe smiled, thinking about all the impossible things that had become possible since he arrived on Earth. His foolproof technology hadn't been foolproof at all. It had been the beginning of something much more valuable than perfection. It had been the beginning of collaboration.